In this part, you will see how to work with files and directories using the command line interface. The top-level directory, also called the root directory, is just represented as a slash, right? So this is the name of that directory. And that's the very first directory in your file system. And this directory contains several subdirectories. So for example, I have a directory under the slash directory called home. So this one. And then under home, I have, for example, a directory called Rafik. So this is the home directory of this user. And then let's see, under this directory, we have a directory called documents, right? So this thing that I'm specifying here, all this, is called a path name, or the path to this directory. And this is another path to this directory. So if we take this path, it actually specifies directions to this directory. So first, you go under this directory, and then under home, and then Rafik, and then documents. So it's actually the full path to this directory. And any path that starts with the root directory, with this slash, is called an absolute path, right? So this is an absolute path. It starts from the root directory. This is another absolute path. This is an absolute path. And there is also something called a relative path. So this one specifies directions to a given file or directory, but it is relative to the current directory. So let's see. Currently we are in this directory, in my home directory. So we can specify a relative path to the documents directory. So this documents directory is within this this current directory, right? So we have documents under my home directory. So we can actually use a relative path name to the documents folder. And the way to do this is just, for example, to list the content of this directory, we can just specify a relative path name like this one, right? So this path name does not start with a slash. It does not start from the root directory, but it starts from the current directory, basically. So it is relative to the current directory. And my current directory is my home directory, right? So my home directory is either this tilde, or we can specify this. So this is just a shortcut that says exactly the same thing as this. It's the home directory of the current user. So to summarize, we have two types of path names, a relative path name and an absolute path name, right? So the absolute path name to a file or a directory specifies the full direction from the root directory until we reach that file. So for example, we want to display the content of a file. Let's start from the root directory. So we want to specify the absolute path name of this file. So we go to home and then my home directory, and then let's go to documents. And then under documents, I know that we have a file called todo.txt, which contains some text. So basically, this is the full path name starting from the root directory. So this is an absolute path name, right, for this file. Now for the same file, we can specify a relative path name. And this relative path name is relative to the current directory, right? So let's check first what is my current directory, and my current directory is this one, right? So starting from this one, I can specify the relative name to this file, right? So in that case, let's use cat just to display the content of the file. So documents, and then todo.txt, right? So since we know that we are currently in this directory, we can specify from that directory a relative path name to the file. Okay. So a relative or an absolute path name like this one, you can always use it independently of what is your current directory, right? So we can always specify the full absolute path name to a file or a directory independently of our current directory. But a relative path name actually depends on what is your current directory. Okay. So let me take another example to clarify this. So let's use the command cd to change the directory and go to /etc. So our current directory now is this one, /etc. So if you do print working directory, pwd, this will tell you that your current working directory is this one, /etc. Okay. So even if /etc does not contain a directory called home or my home directory, I can always specify the full absolute path name to my home directory. For example, I can do this. I can list the content of my home directory regardless of whether I am in my home directory or I am in /etc or somewhere else, right? This always works because I'm specifying the absolute path name here. So we start from the root directory, okay? I can also specify, for example, the absolute path name of the documents folder of the documents directory, right? So this works regardless of my current directory, okay? Now, if I try to specify some relative path name, not the absolute path name as we did here, but let's specify some relative path name, right? So for example, let's try to do ls, let's say Rafik, and then documents, right? Since there is no folder called, or no directory called Rafik under /etc, so this command will fail, right? Because this is a relative path name, it is dependent on our current directory. It assumes that this directory Rafik that I'm specifying here is under my current directory, right? So this relative path name will not work, right? Because there is no such directory under the current directory. Okay. So now let's go to the home directory. So now my current directory is home instead of etc, right? /home. So if you do print working directory, you will get this. Okay. Now we know that under the directory home, there is a directory called Rafik, right? And there is under Rafik a directory called documents, right? So we can actually now use a relative path name, right? So the same thing as previously. It didn't work previously because we were our working directory was /etc, but now our working directory is this one, right? So if I do this, it will work, right? So this is a relative path name. It depends on our current directory, right? So /home, and there under home, there is a directory called Rafik and then documents. I can do the same thing with ls Rafik, right? So this will work. This is again a relative path name to this directory, okay? And it works because /home contains this directory, okay? So if you check the content of /home, it contains a directory called Rafik, right? So when you specify this this relative path name starting from Rafik, your current directory should be this one. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about what we mean by a home directory. So let me go back to my home directory. Okay. So basically, each user on a Linux system has a home directory, right? So typically, for example, if you write /home/ for example, Bob, then this is the home directory of the user Bob, right? If you write /home/Rafik, this is the home directory of the user Rafik, okay? So your home directory is just a place to store your own files, right? And normally users cannot access the home directory of other users. And the tilde character that you see here actually symbolizes or represents the home directory of the current user. In this case, the current user is Rafik. So just by using tilde, it's actually the same thing as using /home/Rafik, right? This is exactly the same thing. So for example, if I display the content of /home/Rafik, this is exactly the same thing as this, right? Since the current user is Rafik, just using tilde means exactly the same thing as /home/Rafik. Okay. There are also other shortcuts. So for example, if you want to refer to the home directory of the current user, is just tilde. But if you want to refer to the home directory of another user, for example, some user called Bob, then you can use tilde Bob, right? So this is exactly the same as if you write /home/Bob, right? Instead of this, you can actually use tilde Bob. If you have a user called Alice, this is the home directory of this user, then a shortcut to represent this would be tilde Alice, okay? Now you should also know the cd command, right? Cd stands for change directory, right? So you want to change your current working directory. So if we want to go to the root directory, the top level directory, the very first directory, which is called /, then we just do cd /, right? So you see now that my current working directory became /. So you can check with print working directory, pwd, and you see that your current working directory is /. We can go to, for example, /etc, right? So my current working directory is now /etc, right? If you want to go back to your home directory, you can do cd and then you specify the full path name to your home directory, or you can use the shortcut, for example, cd this, right? Tilde. This means the home directory of the current user, or this, in my case, right? Tilde Rafik is the home directory of the user Rafik. Um, or if you use actually cd without any argument, just cd, by default, it will go to your home directory, right? So if I do this, yeah, my new directory, my new working directory is my home directory, right? So cd without any argument is exactly the same thing as cd tilde. Now let's see, for example, what do we have under our home directory? We have a document, we have a directory called documents, right? So if I want to go within this directory documents, and if I do cd documents like this, notice that the D is not capital letter here, then this will not work. The system will complain that there is no such directory, right? We can't find this. So you need to use the capital letter here. So be careful about those details, right? So now my working directory is this one, right? So this is the full path name of this working directory. So files and directory names in Linux are case sensitive, right? So capital letter is different from this. So another example very quickly. So let's say that we want to change directory to, let's say, for example, user, let's see, share doc. So now my current working directory became this, right? So it is displayed here in the command prompt, but if it is not, then you can just use print working directory to see where you are currently, right? What is your current working directory? And also, if you try to change the working directory to a directory that doesn't exist, for example, let me just try this directory junk, which does not exist within /etc. So you will get an error, right? If I use cd without any arguments, then by default, it will change to my home directory, right? So as you can see here. So if I type pwd, it tells you that currently you are in your home directory. Okay, cd/etc. And by the way, you can use, when it's a directory here, you can use /etc or /etc/ at the end. This doesn't matter, right? When this is a folder, if there is / at the end, it doesn't matter, it's fine. Okay. So to go back to my home directory, I can either use just cd or cd, and then I specify this path, this shortcut to my home directory, and so on. And the most important thing you need to remember here is the difference between absolute and relative path names, right? So let's take again another example. So cd/etc, for example, let's go to this directory, Perl, and then net, right? So our current directory is this one, right? And this is an absolute path name, right? Because it starts by /. So regardless of what was my current working directory, right? I can specify always this absolute path name. Okay. Now let's go, for example, to this directory. Again, this is an absolute path name, right? Because it starts by /, the root directory. So my current working directory now is /etc/perl. Okay. Now, if I want to go from /etc perl, where I am currently, if I want to go to net, to this directory, then I can specify a relative path name, right? I can do this, cd net, and this is relative to the current directory, right? So it works because net exists within my current working directory. Okay, so now I'm in this directory. And one important thing also that I want you to remember, so let me go back to my home directory. One important thing is, let's for example display all the files and directories within my home directory, and I use -a option to display also the hidden files. So what I want you to observe is that there are those two special folders here, right? Dot and double dots, right? Dot and two dots. So the two dots here actually refers to the parent directory. So if you want to refer to one directory above the current directory, then you can use this double dots, right? And the dot, the single dot, refers to the current directory, right? The directory where you are currently. So again, to explain this, let's, for example, change our directory to /etc perlnet. Okay, so this is our current working directory, right? So if I do cd dot dot, right? This means that I want to go back to the parent directory. So this is my current directory. The parent directory of this one is actually this. Okay, so we want to go one directory above the current one. So let's see. If we do this, we are now in /etc perl. This is the parent directory of this one. Okay, now let me go to um, to this directory net again. So now this is my working directory. So let's just try this. So we can do, if I do cd double dot, this means that I want to go to this directory, the parent directory of my current directory. Okay. But if I add another double dot, this means that I want to go to the parent of the parent's directory. So now we are talking about /etc. Okay. And if I add another one, this means that I want to go to the parent of the parent of the parent directory. So you go um, one step above. So you are in this directory, and then you do the same thing. You are now in this directory, and then you do the same thing, and now you will be in the home, in the root directory. Okay. So if we do this, you'll see that my current working directory became the root directory. So I went 3 directories above the current directory. And this is actually a relative path name, right? It does not start by slash. So it's a relative path name. It is relative to your current working directory. Now let me go back again to this directory where I was. So this is my current working directory. You can do something like this. This is again a relative path name, right? So I go one to the parent directory, and then again to the parent, and then up again to the parent. So at this stage, I'm in the root directory, right? So one directory above, then one directory above, then one directory above. So I'm in the root directory. And then from the root directory, I can go into a folder called user, which is in the root directory. And then within that folder user, we have another one called share, and then a directory called document, doc, right? So if I do this, yeah, now I am in this directory. Okay. And again, this was a relative path name, right? We started from this directory and we went to this one using a relative path name. And again, any directory, okay, so let's go to my home directory, but any directory, let's go, for example, to documents. If you use ls-a, you'll see that it contains dot and double dots, right? So the double dots means the parent directory, and the dot means the current directory. Okay. So if I do cd dot, yeah, you will just stay in your current directory. Nothing changes, right? So cd dots, I'm still in this directory. Okay. But if you do cd two dots, you will go to the parent directory. Okay. So in this directory, in my home directory, there is the directory documents, right? So if I want to go to documents using a relative path name, I can do cd documents, or I can do cd dot slash documents. This is exactly the same thing, right? Because dot means the current directory, which is my home directory now. And then from there, I go to documents, right? Okay, so that's it about absolute versus relative path names.